what is up, combat sports fans? We are back for another episode of The Real and the Rare. And joining me this afternoon, this evening, depending on time zones where you're catching us from, Mr. RYU Peterson. How are we doing today?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm great. Where did RYU come from, man? Are you an old head, Street Fighter?
Well, one, I am an old head. I'm hella old. But two, just from being a kid, back in the day, going to the arcade or going to the pizza joint downtown and playing Street Fighter 2 back when it was out, my boy Jason just started calling me RYU. And literally, it's been that way since I was 6. I've been called RYU since even before I started fighting or anything like that. So if anybody has a mix-up of a Ryan in the gym, they always say RYU Ryan or whatever. So I've been called RYU forever.
That's the way to do it, brother.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll say this much: doing it the right way. I have a thing, man. You cannot give yourself a nickname. Having someone else give you the nickname, giving you your moniker, that's how it's done. You cannot self-proclaim it.
Agreed. And that gets laid out that way. That way, somebody else pointed out, you can name yourself whatever you wanted to. It don't stick. It's got to be from somebody else. But like I said, my boy Jason gave it to me. It stuck, and it's been that way, like I said, since I was 6 years old. So that's the case.
That's the way it is, brother. So as we were talking beforehand, got the beautiful scenery behind you.
Yes, sir. Out here, I live on a ranch out here in Northern California. I got a homestead. We raise all our own animals for food. Have a garden, or we trade a lot of times with people. Just left out here alone to our own devices. I like that. I like being sovereign. I like being left alone, as independent as possible.
The way you do it, man. Like I think over the last month interviewing fighters, two different fighters I've talked to off the grid.
Yep.
They get their own means. They rarely ever go to the supermarket for that.
Yeah.
I had his own chickens. He was like, I got my own eggs. So it's like,
yeah. Who was the other gentleman?
What was his name? He just fought on the Connecticut card.
You can message me after. I'd be interested to see who that was. But yeah, we got chickens. We had cows. They're gone right now. Those got sent to slaughter. Pigs, sheep. The sheep that are about to have lambs here any day now. So, yeah, we do all that, man.
It was Drew Nolan.
Okay, Drew Nolan. I'll check him out. Cool.
He's like legitimate, collects his own rainwater, the whole nine.
Nice, good for you, Drew. Good man.
His interview from like his little perch where he normally hunts. So.
Cool, nice. That's awesome.
Like I said, I've been seeing a whole lot more athletes doing it that way. I think that it's not hard to kind of find the training. I mean, in the day and age we're in now, like if we're talking 20 years ago, the way technology is connecting with people was a whole lot harder than what you see now. So like I think that being able to live off the land, live on your own, you don't really have too many people to kind of mess with your environment, so to speak. It's
yeah. Well, that's obviously there's pros and cons to all of this. The pros are I'm left alone. I get to kind of do as I please. I know what goes into all my food. Privacy is a major issue. But also, here's the cons, though, is that I'm a little bit far away from people. It's hard to get to things sometimes. It's hard. I actually live not too far from the gym, luckily, but I have a gym here at my house, too. And but I'm in Humboldt County, to where we're shut off from the rest of the world. And literally, probably every winter, we've got, I think, you can either come in on Highway 101 or Highway 36, and there's also another Highway 299. And every winter, these highways slide. So you're landlocked for a lot of the winter, so things don't come and go out of here. So it could be a bit challenging, but I've made it happen. I left for a while too to go train and go to different gyms. Lived up basically in Canada. I lived up there for 5 years to just get training in and pursue what I wanted to pursue.
Gotta take the pros with the cons with it sometimes, my friend.
Amen.
I say no matter what, like. Like I said, you can call training partners in the company, like, hey, like come stay in the ranch for a few weeks. Let's get some work.
Yep, exactly.
It's so much easier to do that than, like I said, than it was, 15, 20 years ago when, combat sports really kind of making its rise, and we see what has been done here over the last, what Feldman's been able to do over the last handful of years. I've been asking a lot of athletes this, especially the combat sports ones. Don't you feel the UFC's kind of leveled off, and the gap between BKFC and some of these other, even boxing itself has kind of stepped back up into the limelight a little bit. You got Dana White promoting boxing now, but don't you feel BKFC is probably one or two big, I wouldn't even say free agents, just big moments to completely fill in that gap between where the UFC used to be and where they are now?
Yeah, what's funny is I actually don't really even watch fights, but I can say this, that I think that by far the BKFC is the most exciting one to watch. The action is fast, everybody's pressing the pace, and a lot of knockouts, which is what people are going for. It's what the fans want to see. But I just feel like, it's the most exciting thing that's going right now. So, what a blessing to have this platform. As in here, it's only been around for 7 years and it's just taken off like a rocket. You look at UFC in its first 7 years, it was still kind of underground until basically 2005 with the Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner fight on The Ultimate Fighter. Then, they got some rocket fuel in their system. But hey, the future is bright, and there's only one way, and that's up for BKFC.
It is, and I'm not even going to say just bare knuckle in general. Regardless,
Yeah, agreed.
BYB, they have a great platform and put on great fights and have some of the top fighters in the world there. And we even seen over the last week, your female featherweight champion and their featherweight champion kind of trading barbs there for a bit. I mean, I think I would hope, like, at some point in time over the next 10 years, we see something like what we've seen with the UFC and Pride at one point in time, where you have a co-promotion, you really find out who the best fighters in the world at X weight class, at B weight class, at C weight class,
Yeah, that's always going to be a question until that it's answered. But again, very few times, obviously, did UFC and Pride actually get to have a cross promotion where Chuck Liddell went over there. Trying to think who else went over for a while. Maybe it just was Chuck back in the day, right? But that's a tough one, obviously, when business gets involved, because money gets involved. Who wants the lion's share of the promotion or the gate or whatever it might be? But even so, that's all the people that got involved in bare knuckle got into it just to see where they're at in the game.
Yeah, it's a great time in combat sports. I say, like, from where it's grown, accessibility, the streaming apps, like, you've seen so much stuff happen to kind of make it easier for some of the athletes to be seen. You don't necessarily, even the pay-per-view model, it looks like it's almost dying or completely going to be dead within a matter of a few years. So it's an interesting time in the combat sports world. I say it that way.
Yeah, agreed. It is interesting. I don't know if sometimes I look at the platforms. Obviously, like I said, I don't really watch too many fights, actually, but you've got the ESPN Plus thing where you have to subscribe to ESPN plus pay for the fight, which I think that's kind of a bit of a hassle. And I think that there probably will come up with some way to mitigate that whole concept.
Licensing deals on, and I think there's a good possibility we're going to see it on multiple different avenues. I don't know if we're going to still have. I think that ESPN has removed half of the library off of there, so I think I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little Netflix and a little Amazon. Maybe you do see a big network like an NBC Sports or ABC Sports, whatever. I think you'll see them on that, where you won't have that pay-per-view anymore, and it won't be so hard to sit there, pay for UFC Fight Pass and pay for ESPN Plus.
Yeah,
having to pay for the pay-per-views on top of it. I think it'll help the UFC kind of. I think their biggest problem lately is just you don't have that star power. You have a handful of guys that are about to retire. You just seen the John Jones debacle kind of come and go, but they don't like they're losing a lot of their big stars that really perform for them. It's interesting. Obviously, no one's a star until they get that big fight, and then they kind of blow up throughout the world. But it's one of those things that I think they're lacking the star power, and it's because of a BKFC coming in and a lot of the guys and girls who used to fight for the bigger promotion come, and they prefer to just concentrate on bare knuckle. One of the pure things of combat sports, if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think anytime I'm asked about my opinion about bare knuckle, I say this is original combat. The very first fight that ever happened in history was a bare knuckle fist fight. You know what I mean? No doubt. I have no doubts about that. So this is original combat, man to man, whatever, woman to woman, whatever you want to say, and just a bare knuckle, barehanded scrap. And that's the way history started, and here we are again.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting time throughout the sport. The only thing that I think is really kind of scratching my head right now is you heard about what's going on with Ben Askren right now, right?
You know what? I don't have a whole lot of idea. I did see something this morning about Jake Paul talking about he needs a double lung transplant or something.
The initial thing is going on. He was hospitalized, I bet it was 2-3 weeks ago or something, and now like he's looking to get in to have this surgery, and now the freaking insurance company he has is denying him the surgery because it costs too much.
Wow.
And, we're in this state, and the comment that Jake made was like, obviously he's going to make a donation and things of that nature, but he's fought on some of the biggest stages. He's one of the more decorated wrestlers, point blank and period.
Yeah.
When you hear about Ben Askren, his wrestling is some of the top here in the United States. He's fought. He was a champion for Bellator. He fought for the UFC. You would assume someone in between there would step in and make sure the surgery happens, and it sucks that a guy like Jake Paul, is sitting there like, oh, well, I'm going to step in and take care of it. It's just, it shouldn't get to that point. It shouldn't get to the point where it has to come across Jake's desk, Dana White's desk, and anyone's desk. The medical companies need to do this. Is that something you worry about as you get older? Like, how it is going to cover yourself for insurance?
Well, yeah, that's obviously that's just a big issue overall in our country. But insurance is such a scam. The fact that you could just pour tons of money into it for, from the beginning of time, and then at the end they just say, no, we're not doing that. We're not paying for it. My aunt and uncle here in California, fire insurance, this does nothing compared to what Askren is dealing with. I feel just terrible for his family. But here, my aunt and uncle, they live down the way from me here. They paid home insurance on their place. They own their home. They paid home insurance on their place for the last 45 years or so. Fire insurance, all this kind of stuff. Well, California obviously has a lot of fires, so the insurance company just ups and drops them. Doesn't give them an opportunity, doesn't give anything, just drops them. And yet here they've paid, over $200,000 into this for somebody to just say, nope, we're not covering you anymore. They got nothing out of it. They never had a claim, never in all these years that they had a claim. And yet the insurance company says, all right, you're done. And that's the thing here with Askren. He's paid into his insurance potentially, whatever insurance he might have. Or is Askren an Olympian as well?
I'm not sure if he was an Olympian. I know he was a NCAA champion, but
okay.
I don't recall an Olympian.
Either way, you figure that somebody with his prestige and the things he's accomplished, that there might be something set up or somebody willing to come and help. And although I do believe in people being independent, taking care of their stuff, he's given a piece of himself to a lot of people. And it's really a slap in the face to everybody that is dealing with the insurance companies. That makes you. This is exactly when people get a bitter taste in their mouth to these sides, and then people like that Luigi gentleman that go and cap that dude that everybody applauds and nobody gets upset about it. Then people say, "Oh, you're sick for that," but it's people end up building a vendetta against these companies because of behavior like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most what you mentioned. What your parents went through with fire insurance and all that. Disgusting, especially with what was going on there in California.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just your regular old people like you. You had Hollywood stars, actors, things of that nature that were scrambling to make sure that they were taken care of. And
yeah.
More so, like I heard, like water was shut off in the area. Like some of the stuff that was coming out was disgusting. And then again, you see the insurance companies, getting more dirt thrown on their name as.
They always come out with the upper hand, and that's where people get they end up building building a case against these type of companies for behavior like that. That's ill behavior. It lacks integrity to do something like that, to say, hey, we're going to drop you even though you paid into it. How about you give me all my money back because you actually never insured a thing, and then in the case that maybe you are paying into your insurance, maybe they even just deny your claim as it is. There's all sorts of ways to weave these type of stories, but they're not in business because they're losing money. I'll tell you that. It goes the same with, casinos and things like that. They're not in business because they're handing out cash. I'll tell you that.
Well, I mean, you see it all the time. Like professional gamblers, like, oh, you're either banned from the casino, or you can't play this specific game. You can do this, you can do that. You can't play blackjack, or you can't play craps. Like, what is this?
Yep, exactly. Here, you're basically, if we can't scam you, then you can't be here, and that's kind of the message that's sent in a way.
Such is the world we live in these days.
Yep, it's a strange place. I'm a pro-capitalist, but sometimes I look at some of the things that are going on, and I just think this is not ideal.
It ain't. It's a wonky world we live in. And
at times it can be. So you got to find your blessings and keep a hold of those.
I mean, we see all kinds of crazy stuff. Like I said, I was mentioning John Jones' retirement. He's been basically put the UFC on the hook for about a good year almost. And then, days, minutes, hours after his retirement, he's got more legal trouble. And
I saw something about was he got another arrest coming or something along those lines?
It looks like it, and they have some audio apparently. Like, I guess the woman was saying John was driving, and then John, obviously denying the fact, and then not just that, was just threatening them. Like it's not the first time I've threatened somebody this year. My brother's killers.
Wow.
Third, I'm like, if I'm a lawyer, I'm running. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't want nothing to do with this. This is a whole shit show.
Yeah, that's not behavior you want to be involved in. Obviously, like I say, that kind of shit lacks integrity, and to behave that way, that's too bad. Especially for such a wonderful athlete like him. The guy's probably the greatest of all time in MMA, but yet can't keep his head on his shoulders. And I remember I did see the other day when this came up, I saw a video of DC talking about that, saying that he's got a PR gal that he's like, you can see it in her eyes that she just knows that this guy is always going to be causing trouble. So that really is, just obviously trash for him, trash for his family. That sucks. You know what I mean? So it's a shame.
I mean, I'm going to bring this one up. Off of that, you said he's arguably the greatest of all time. No losses. That no one considers the Matt Hamill fight.
That was a bunch of bullshit.
that was probably bullshit I've ever seen anyone ever take.
Yeah,
dislocates his shoulder on the first takedown of the fight. John was throwing 12-6 as they stop it. He points at his shoulder. He loses the fight that way. It's a terrible way as an athlete to lose a fight. That being said, we've seen John Jones do the whole Mount Rushmore lists, like here's, John Jones list, himself, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, GSP, and Anderson Silva. I always like to ask this. It's still probably unfair, but if you had your own Mount Rushmore of combat sports, it doesn't necessarily just have to be MMA. We could do boxing, whatever. Who would be your 4 athletes you would put a Mount Rushmore on for combat sports?
Wow. Okay, so for MMA, I got to say, I think that John Jones is probably the greatest. Although I do, I admire Demetrius, I admire Anderson Silva, GSP. I think all those guys are great, but I think that John really has almost no flaws in his game, the way things went. So I'd probably put John up there. Mike Tyson, just for the sheer impact that Mike had on my life and in boxing. Although his career is actually kind of a quick flash compared to some of these guys that went through the decades. Oh boy, I'm trying to think who else might I put on there. Shoot, then I start thinking. Let me think of kickboxing. You got to go probably Ernesto Hoost for kickboxing, and let me think of a wrestler. I'm going to put Dan Gable on there. I just basically tried to pick a one from each sport. I put Dan Gable on there as well.
Yeah, there you go. Got literally covered the entire mixed martial arts world.
Yeah, I tried to go through each one there. So I'm a big fan of Gable, big fan of Gable's work ethic. I never wrestled growing up, but I'm a giant fan of Dan Gable.
Yeah, when we're talking about USA Wrestling, that's one of the names that's synonymous. So
Yep.
I don't have any gripes with your interpretation of your list.
Yeah, cool.
So another one I go through, I came across this meme the other day, and it just cracks me up. Right, you see the retarded guy from South Park there, but MMA bloggers use the term fraud check. I hate this word. I do. I really do, because sometimes you get some of these athletes and they're highly touted from other sports. They're highly touted for this reason or that reason. And eventually at some point in time, very few fighters get out of the game like John Jones, where you don't get figured out and exposed inside of the cage.
Yeah.
That's why he's on the Mount Rushmore list is the greatest of all time list. And I have a problem with the GOAT talk period. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, because there's so many different variables, with weight classes, men or women, which era are we talking about?
Yeah.
Like there's so many different variables when we're having this conversation. And then, Ronda Rousey was fraud checked. Well, if it wasn't for Ronda Rousey, women would have never made it to the UFC. So, as much as she was a one-trick pony, yeah, but then now you're having conversations with her now where she was basically walking around unconscious half the time.
Yeah. So, I've actually never seen that meme or that. So the term is basically, somebody might be full of shit or they haven't been tested. Is that the
basically they've been fraud checked? Who was the Bo Nickel? Lost his fight recently, and they were like, he's been fraud checked. I'm like, he's a wrestler.
Yeah, I mean that's a funny thing to say, because hey, all these guys are working their asses off, and it's a fight. Anything can happen in a fight. You get caught, you could have somebody that wins. Look at GSP and Matt Serra. I mean, nobody gave Matt Serra a chance in that first one. It's a fight. GSP got caught, GSP came back and beat him, but that doesn't mean he's a fraud. It's a fight. There's a winner and there's a loser in a fight, and that's just what happens.
It is.
I wouldn't take away anything from anybody that's getting in there and testing nuts,
Yeah, like I said, it's a saying that I can't stand. I really can't, because there's so many different things that goes on in the fight mentally.
Yeah,
etc. Like, you could have a really tough matchup. This, one of your non-strengths is, cage grappling or just wrestling in general, and you wind up getting put in there against a world class, wrestler, and then you wind up being put on your back for 15 minutes, 25 minutes, however it winds up working out. So it's one of those terms I just really can't stand. Like, listen, styles make fights. I've said it for the longest time. We're all, as mixed martial arts is concerned, it's the ultimate test.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
we're talking boxing, wrestling, jujitsu, judo. I mean, there's so many different things, and even like you're seeing, karate combat's blown up fairly big over the last few years, and there's just so many different aspects to it. I just can't stand when people just want to tear an athlete down, and
yeah. Well, again, it's like it shows that guy at the computer, obviously a guy that hasn't done shit or.
Nine times and that's the funny part why I chose that one, because 9 times out of 10, the person that's sitting there saying this person's the worst fighter in the world, they look like that.
Well, and not only that, what the fuck is what does their opinion mean anyways? What have they accomplished? And again, too, you have to. Does this person's opinion actually hold weight? Does it actually hold water if we put it to the test, or is it just somebody just spouting off? You got 8 billion people on Earth, 8 billion different opinions and perspectives. You got to figure which one you got to put, that you could put your money on. That's probably very few.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that you say it that way too, because like I did an interview with Jessica prior to her fight in Texas, and this guy was like, "Oh, she's just an average fighter." I'm like, "Have you even listened to anything that's happened to this woman over the last 3 years? She had a parasite that's bigger than you."
Wow.
Basically, ravaging her muscles, her nutrition's in her body, and this, that, and the third. I looked at her weigh-ins. I'm like, good God, that's probably the best that she's ever looked, in my opinion. So, and then like you're sitting there saying like, oh, well, she's this and she's that. I'm like, you're tearing her apart, and you're not even paying attention to what's going on. And then she winds up beating, a world champion boxer in her BKFC debut.
Nice, good.
I messaged them back. I'm like, what about now? Like, oh, well, she got lucky. I'm like, all right, dude.
Oh, yeah, right, huh?
I'm done.
Well, there's an old quote: "The harder I work, the luckier I get."
Yeah.
So that's all hard work, man. She didn't go in there untrained and nothing like that. Just happened to flip the coin the right way that night. She was determined, had the audacity to do it, and went for it. So. Yeah, what's something too is I'm not really big on people that mouth off. I'm not a shit talker myself. I feel like this is a respectable endeavor. The fact that it's just 2 people going head up. So that's one thing with me, is I've never been much for talking. I'm not much for the internet. Literally, actually, where I live, I didn't even have the internet until last November. So I don't have cable. I don't have internet. None of that. So just not my scene.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen. There's a video of one of the former Ultimate Fighter winners. He was in the crowd, right? And I guess he was just throwing his hands around, and he wound up clipping one of the fans.
Oh,
didn't
no!
knock the fan out, but I think it was funny. What was his name? This guy. He was at the 137 weigh-ins, and he wound up luckily didn't knock the fan out. The fan was cool about it. Wasn't one of those D-bags like, oh well, I'm gonna sue because this is the UFC fighter.
Oh wow. Well, good. Hopefully that sticks then, and they just they don't understand it was a mistake.
The craziest things happen at not just in the cage, but at fights. Sometimes you just have to be in awe on what goes on in the sport from time to time.
Yeah. That's a wild one. Again, it could have been somebody else, and they want to fake an injury or do something crazy and try to sue them. So good that it didn't go that way.
The combat sports athletes doesn't have enough protection when it comes to stuff like that. So
yeah, right, huh? I agree.
I'll just leave it at that. But want to get into your fight a little bit. I mean, obviously that they made the announcement. Fight night here in Philly. David Feldman's keeping to his promise. He's already been to Philly. What is it now? 3 times in 7 months.
Yeah, this will be number 3.
Yeah,
number 3 in Philly.
You get the main slot there against Dustin Pague.
Yes, sir.
How excited are you for this matchup? July 25th. The 2300 Arena here in South Philadelphia. How excited are you for this matchup?
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I feel like this is, I feel like part of it is destiny, which might sound a little bit wild, but I just feel like truly I was born for this, man. I was born for this game, and I love it. I love bare knuckle fighting, and what a wonderful thing to have it at this venue as well. I'm an old school wrestling fan, so I love old school ECW. I just find that to be a good omen. Dustin seems like a respectable dude. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited. He seems like the type of guy that, he'd shake your hand before, shake your hand after, and we'll go to war while we're in there.
Yeah, he definitely does seems one of those respectful, humble guys.
Yeah.
You see some of these fighters and all they do is yap, 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 like, the Jake Pauls of the world. I was already mentioning what was going on with Jessica Borga and Jamie Driver over the past week. You have some fighters that talking is their game, and that's how they get matchups and fights. And some
Yeah.
are literally the epitome of what a martial artist is. It's humble, it's quiet, and it's respect.
It's funny, like
you don't
go ahead.
see anymore, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny that it's somewhat, I don't know, ironic or coincidental that my nickname is Ryu, and I really resonate with the character Ryu from Street Fighter, just pursuing bettering yourself through fighting, through martial arts. I feel that to my core. I grew up a screw up, man. I grew up just being an idiot on the streets, and this is exactly what turned my life around. I was getting in street fights every single day, hurting people, having dreams about being locked up because I was just couldn't hold my insecurities down, couldn't hold my temper or whatever it might be, and started going to the gym, and that turned my life around. So I feel like, that's just part of the blessing that martial arts can do, getting communities involved in martial arts to produce things like that, to give that blessing of just a strong community or a strong person, a strong individual with self-belief, self-esteem, and again, people could talk themselves into fights as far as, on the television and pay-per-view and all that kind of stuff. But I really think that is just the antithesis of martial arts. And actually, I'm a kind of a fan of Jake Paul too, just for what he's done. Even though I'm not much into the mouth and off and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I give the guy credit for the fact that he's really what was he? Everybody always busts his balls saying he's a Disney star or something like that, but he's going out there and doing it
as one of the one of the Disney guys.
Yeah, but he's doing it though. You know what I mean? He's put his dedication into his training. He's got proper coaches. He's not a slouch. And now people are going to want to argue and say, oh, well, why doesn't he fight somebody in their prime, this and that? Well, he's not ready to fight somebody that's Canelo's much smaller, but I know he's called out Canelo before. But, if he was to fight somebody that was in the top 10 in that weight division, I don't think he would fend as well. But he's fighting good guys. He's fighting guys that it takes balls to call them out, and it takes balls to get in there and display what you got. So I give the guy credit, but I also give him credit for what he's done for the promotion of boxing, as far as I believe he's paying guys pretty well. Here he's stepping up to pay or to help out Ben Askren. That's really, I think it's a little bit of kayfabe here, where he almost plays a villain on the television or on the internet, social media and this and that. But in reality, I think he's probably a good dude.
See, here's my thing with Jake. All the things you say you respect for him, I do too. Like, how many fighters build up their resume with absolute trash cans of athletes? He's testing himself on the fly as he's learning. I will absolutely give him credit for that. Where I go and say this is why I can't do it is one of the things I already mentioned. He's a weight bully. That's one. He's fighting some of these older guys. Well, that's going to happen when you're building a brand and fighting guys that you're stealing their star, so to speak.
Understood. Yeah.
But my thing is, like, he's starting to get there. Obviously, last night he fought, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and neither one of them looked like they had a mark left on them. I didn't watch the fight, so I can't sit there and say what happened one way or another. But he's calling out the champions and the top 10 guys in his weight class, which is what I said that's what it would take for me to kind of let off on tearing him down. Listen, you can only tear him down so far, because you're absolutely right. He's done so much for the sport of boxing.
Yeah.
Over the last handful of years, and I'll said it on this program many times. I'll continue to say the smartest thing he did when he started this venture was bringing Amanda Serrano along with him. She is an absolute star. She brings in the the Puerto Rican community, which in turn brings in the Mexican community, which is some of the bigger communities as far as when we're talking about combat sports and boxing. So he is a marketing genius. I know he was just on one of the bigger shows. He wound up hanging up on, but he said it's like, listen, I'm trying to sell pay-per-views off of your platform. I could care less what you say of me, what you think of me, etc. And that's the attitude you should have. I don't care how he goes about some of the things or some of that, but that's all part of the pageantry of what goes on when you're trying to promote and sell and stuff like that. So I said, won't tear him down too much, but he's starting to get to that point where he's calling out the right people. He's calling out the guys that are in his weight class. He's calling out the guys that are within his age bracket. So like I said, for me personally, the Jake Paul hate has kind of calmed down a little bit, but that's also because he's fighting more and more legitimate guys.
Yeah, and that'll come. And to be honest with you, I actually did. I mean, I didn't care for the idea of him fighting Mike Tyson. I'm the biggest freaking Mike Tyson fan. I love Mike, but obviously it's funny because you talk with people who are just casuals in fan. They think, oh, what was all that stuff of Mike when he was training? It's like, well, you're looking at 5-second clips that were spliced together. Mike, because obviously he was 56 at the time. And I respect Jake for the fact that it was probably the second or the third round when he hit Mike with something. It was kind of obvious that, all right, he could probably take him at any time if he wanted to. And he didn't. He laid off. He didn't give Mike any injuries. And I'm sure that he loves Mike just like we all do, So, and again, hopefully that got Mike a nice payday. Not that that's necessarily what it's all about, but at 56, you're not doing it. Mike's done it all. He doesn't need the glory. He's doing it for the money. And at least it got him in good shape, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's one of those things where you don't want to see somebody like Mike go in there and I mean, regardless of what anyone thinks, I think there was a gentleman's agreement that once one clipped the other or et cetera, that there would be a pullback. I think there was a couple times where we all thought Mike could have put a nice combination together and send Jake across the ring, and you'd see like you don't know if it was age or whatever, but like you said, when he clipped him, he knew he clipped him. It was just like, okay. He's like,
you could see it at that point, and that changed the tide right there to where it was almost like he took off the gas a little bit.
Yeah,
Mike really didn't push the gas on it either. I mean, everybody's hoping for him to come out guns blazing and just show just a glimmer of what a 20-year-old Tyson is. But it's just hey, guy's almost 60 years old. He's got total peace in his heart. So that's good though.
It is. I mean, like, listen, I'm sure there 90% of the people who tuned in that night was praying and hoping they would see.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike, and it doesn't always happen that way.
Yeah. So a bit of, like you mentioned, the pageantry of it. It's a bit of a WWE-esque type. There's a spectacle involved there, and maybe not the same spectacle that you would go to if you went to go watch a real, or I don't want to say a real boxing match, but two guys who were maybe, going for the number one contender spot or going for a title. You would see them basically go to war. As this, it was more of a spectacle fight, as a lot of Paul's fights are, because that's, what he's doing, where he's at right now, rather than fighting just randoms.
I mean, we see spectacles and all kinds of. It doesn't matter what. Like, all right, BKFC. Over the past month, so we're watching BKFC Ice. We're watching.
Yeah.
Hockey guys, and that has a niche to it as well. It's not like it's just this whole new thing. I mean, hockey's kind of like completely gone away from like the enforcers and things of that nature. So these guys need somewhere that they want to throw their hands in. I applaud BKFC for seeing that they needed a platform to kind of perform on, and from what I heard, the last two events have been pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, it's something when you get somebody involved. I believe Kevin Smith has got a big hand in this. Kevin obviously loves hockey. He's a Canadian. He loves hockey. And so, when you get somebody that's passionate about something and they get to put their heart into that outlet, that's where genius happens,
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing Feldman with BKFC. Just, what was it, yesterday, I think it was, where he put up the post from back in 2010 where he said, bare knuckle boxing coming soon. It had like 3 likes on it. And here was his vision 15 years ago, and now it's come to fruition. He's got passion involved. It's what he wanted to do, and it's given everybody a fantastic platform.
I'm glad
what the hell would I be doing right now? I don't know if I'd be. I was a kickboxer before all this. I don't know if I'd still be kickboxing at the moment. I might just call it good. But when I saw bare knuckle fighting come about, I just knew that was for me, and I just saw it and I thought, this is exactly what I need to be doing. And here it is now. It's finally, we have finally a wonderful platform. It's a good presentation of a show, and hey, here we are. Here we are, 2025.
Yeah, I mean, and you're not the only athlete, that has been in that boat, man. Like, you've seen a lot of fighters from a lot of different backgrounds, and guys that we're getting close to the end of being able to compete at the level that they wanted to, and then up comes David Feldman with bare knuckle fighting championships, and you can love him, you can hate him, you can dislike him about this, but he's given all you athletes, another lease on your combat sports dream. So, some people do it, strictly for the notoriety or the glory, so to speak, and then some do it because they just love to throw down. So, I mean,
yeah. Hey, I literally feel like this is what I was born for bare knuckle fighting. And I'm blessed to have found it. It's blessed to have the platform, a good platform as well, because obviously, you can go do bare knuckle fighting anywhere you wanted to if you just want to go get a street fight, but that's not really an honorable thing to do. No, I think this is fantastic. And I think a lot of these guys as well are finding that, surprisingly, training for bare knuckle is much easier on your body than, MMA's training is rough on your body. Kickboxing was rough on my body. I find this to be pretty smooth on my body, that it's not, it doesn't put as much wear and tear as you might think.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's people that argue, like, oh, it's barbaric, it's this, it's that. Like, I think the worst thing is just you guys get caught up a little bit more than you would, MMA, etc.
Yeah.
But I also
yeah.
think you don't. The long-term damage isn't going to be as much as it was, if you're boxing or if you're kickboxing.
Yeah. That's correct. So we have we participate in a study. Basically, all of us sign a thing that participates in a study before this. So they're collecting all the data from all the fights. BKFC has got a 2% concussion rate as opposed to boxing, which has an 11% concussion rate. So you can see that's a massive difference, just, only 2%, because obviously in bare knuckle, you get people that get hit and they decide, all right, that was enough damage, or their nose gets smeared across their face. It's like, all right, that's good. We don't have a 3 knockdown rule. So, that is up to the fighter if he wants to continue. But a 2% concussion rate is quite a bit better than 11%. But we do have a 30% cut rate, which can make it on paper appear to be a blood sport. And in a sense, it is, but it's also a skill sport as well.
And that's what I got to ask you. Like you said, you came from a kickboxing background. It's hard to spar when it comes to bare knuckle. So how do you go about preparing for these? Like do like a what do they say, a flow spar or flow boxing or things? Because you don't have gloves, so defending is different. Throwing is different. So you don't have ways to kind of hide some of that. It's
definitely not the same. You can't do this other than doing it live, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Because the way I tell people, in bare knuckle boxing, everything is of consequence. So whether I'm throwing a punch or whether I'm getting punched, right? If I'm throwing a punch, I have the potential of damaging my hand. Where in boxing, you generally are not going to have damage. Your hand is fairly well taped up. You have a glove on with protection over your hand. If you're receiving a punch, you have the potential of a cut, of being knocked out, whatever it might be. So, everything is of consequence in this game. So to spar like that, it's just not the same. People in bare knuckle, you might be tentative to throw something because of that consequence. In boxing, you could just wing it. You can block with the glove much better. It's really hard to block with the bare fist, right? Even if I put my hand up and I get hit, there's still going to be something there. Maybe it even smashes my hand up there. So as far as the way I spar, I generally spar with just normal. I'll do boxers or MMA fighters. I'll spar with them, or kickboxers, whoever. Just combat sports athletes. Spar with them in boxing. Do clinch work as well. And then there's been times where I took the the turtle gloves for MMA, and use those for sparring as well. But of course, you got to watch your pace with that, because you start I think damage can be accumulated in sparring with those really easy. But that's probably been the best way that I think you could do is those small MMA sparring gloves.
Yeah, it's not easy, man. I think the only thing is, like you said, is just being in the fire is kind of the best feel for over sparring, training, whatever. You can just
Yep.
I think really is just basically watch film on your opponent, see what their tendencies and weaknesses are, and kind of attack it that way.
What's funny is I don't watch footage. Like I said, man, I really actually hardly watch any fights at all. I don't watch footage on my opponents. I maybe see 20 or 30 seconds. I might Google the guy. I don't look at social media. I don't look at their pages. I don't look at their Facebook or Instagram. I really don't. I just meet them that night and figure. The way I kind of look at it is if this guy ran up on me in the street, what would happen? You know what I mean? And maybe that's not necessarily the brightest way, but I also believe that what you see in there is different than what you see on television, right? It's no different than the armchair quarterback on here. Sorry, that's loud. Got wind on there. No different than the armchair quarterback in the sense that, everybody's yelling at the screen, why didn't he throw it downfield? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't that? Well, the gentleman throwing the ball, the quarterback, doesn't see what you see from that third-person perspective, and that's the same in fighting as well. What you're seeing from the screen is not the exact same. Now, of course, you might be able to pick up a tendency that the individual has, but while you're in there, you need to apply that. And again, everything is of consequence. So are you willing to take that step? Are you willing to cross that line? Are you willing to apply that pressure, have the pressure applied to land what you think you're going to land? And again, everything in bare knuckle, it all counts.
Yeah, it definitely does. A few more before I let you go. Obviously last night we seen a double champ crowned. Alili stopped
Oliveira.
got collected a second belt, obviously. But it makes me go back to who are some of your favorite 2-weight champions? I came across this graphic a few times. We seen BJ Penn.
Oh wow, okay.
Randy Couture, George St. Pierre, Daniel Cormier.
I'm a big fan of BJ. I like BJ a lot. I feel bad for whatever he's going through right now.
Dude, I've talked about it. We talk about it all the time, about people need to go help some of the older athletes so they don't end up in these situations. I firmly believe that if the UFC was still involved in Stephan Bonner's life, he would still be with us right now. Yeah,
that's an interesting thought, because obviously, it's a lot of what ifs. There are a lot of variables. But I have a buddy that's involved in mental health, and he mentioned to me a thing called, I think it's called Capgras syndrome, CAPGRAS, Capgras syndrome, and it basically describes exactly what BJ is going through. And I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, so I can't diagnose him. But if you look up Capgras syndrome, you'll see it basically fits everything that BJ is talking about. That he thinks that people are imposters, or thinks that somebody murdered his family and changed them out. And it's really a shame to watch that. Of course, you have social media is, saying, oh, he's on meth, this and that. I don't know about that. To me, when I see him, he didn't look like he was on meth, but it's really sad to see what's going on with him right now. And in my opinion, BJ, I probably should have put him, if I had another person to put on that mountain. I love BJ. I'm a big BJ Penn fan.
I am too. I was in attendance for UFC 101 here in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
So I thought Kenny Florian would be like, listen, if Kenny can get into the ground and make it a jiu-jitsu match, he might have a chance. And then BJ just beat Kenny down, submitted him, did what BJ normally does. So
that was a brilliant performance. That was prime BJ, right?
Yeah, that was prime BJ. And like you said, definitely concerned with him. I hope somebody, in the combat sports realm reaches out to him and helps them out in any way that they can. But it is sad to see. He is one of my favorite double champs. Henry Cejudo. You definitely gotta tip your cap to him as well. Coming from that wrestling background and being a 2-weight champion. Conor McGregor is more of the audience he brought in, his effect on the sport as a whole.
Yeah.
Feel like he was a great double champ. But John Jones obviously is tops it, but I don't give him the full respect to that because of his retiring and not fighting Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, and as well. But I mean, how about this? The top of the mountain is always, there's always a landslide going on. For the fact that John Jones held it for so long, it's really a shame that his personal life wasn't together. The fact that he held it at the top for so long, despite the fact that there was, big breaks in between, it would be nice if he was to get in there with everybody that was at that, everybody that thinks they're going to be taking that spot. That would be nice. And to be honest with you, I've never seen Tom Aspinall fight, so I'm not certain of that. But yeah, that's a different one. You mentioned Connor. Connor is like a life character that got maxed out on charisma points. In D&D style, maxed out on charisma points, and it brought so many people in. And it's a rare individual to be able to captivate the world that way. So I applaud Connor for that.
He's special for that. Like there's people that could not. It didn't matter what he could be. Eating ice cream. And people would tune in.
People are interested. Yeah, that's something. I remember back in the day, there was a website called MiddleEasy.com, and I remember they used to call him. Yep, they used to call him the Diaz brother of Ireland. And I remember watching something on him. This is probably back maybe 2011 or maybe 2012. I remember watching him back then. And, even then when he was fighting, was it Cage Warriors? You could see that he was special. And then as momentum grew, he set himself apart from what other fighters were doing. Everybody else was, when they go to the press conference, he'd always be dressed very nice, but he did the bow tie thing. He always stood out. He always did something to set himself apart from everybody else, and that was fantastic. Hey, he's my boss. Pay me, brother.
Listen, that's what crazy world what I talk about we live in. Conor McGregor is your boss.
Yeah, that is weird, right? Let's have some Stone Cold Steve Austin, Vince McMahon action. Let's get a boss versus employee fight, whatever.
I'm a firm believer that we will never see him fight again.
I'm not certain. He definitely doesn't need to, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like I think Dana was right. When he got to a certain amount of money, then he started accumulating losses and things of that nature that he doesn't have to do it anymore. I think he's more interested in promoting and growing bare knuckle and things along them lines. Even I think the next McGregor will probably see fight is one of his kids.
Hey, that'd be pretty wild. That'd be cool to see. Yeah, I think about it. He seems to have his plate full. Obviously, I've seen there's some political things going on where he's standing up for the people of Ireland, which is fantastic. And what a guy what an individual to lead that, to go down that path. He's got the influence and the charisma to carry that torch.
I mean, if you were like say from a man from another country and you see what was going on in yours and you would build your brand up to that point and you were speaking out and saying I'm going to run for president like Conor's doing.
Yeah, he could pull it off. I think that they would vote him in is my assumption.
I mean, you see the numbers that he pulls on pay-per-view. Can you imagine what happened if he actually ran and actually had like a political team around him?
I would hope that he'd have a strong cabinet with him, so that way all bases were covered. Yeah.
Do whatever to tear his character down. He parties too much. He does this.
So you need somebody.
Clubs. He does that. He does this. They would play every political scam out of the book that
every skeleton would come out. That's for sure.
Yeah. I hope that the people of Ireland see better days, and if Conor McGregor's the one to take him there, so be it. But I was talking about Conor's next kid being fighting. I don't know if you've seen this, but did you see that Bellamere has returned? And
that's fantastic.
She made a statement that she's going to compete in the Olympics in 2028.
Oh, right on. Good. That's good. Frank Mir is fantastic, and having his kids compete is good. So was she competing in the UFC BJJ thing? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, that's what she was doing. She's taking. Okay. I think that was her first big match in doing anything in 2 years. I know she did a couple amateur MMA fights, like back to back, and then Frank. I don't know if it was her or Frank shut it down. I think it was almost 2 years from the time that she had done anything significant. So I'm interested to see, because Frank, I think, was was a rare hybrid heavyweight that competed at the craziest time that there ever was. I mean, broke Tim Sylvia's arm.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, he knee barred Brock Lesnar at the height of Brock's career and things of that.
yeah.
Stopping Nogueira with that
With the Kimura, right?
I will never forget that submission. I remember, Nogueira's gonna beat him up. I'm like, listen, don't count Frank Mir out. Guess what? I think that probably has to be one of the nastiest bone break submissions that we've seen in a higher promotion like that.
Yeah, Nogueira took it like a champ too.
Right, he just looked down his arm like, oh well.
Knew that's the consequence, right? He wasn't going to tap, which is wild, but he took it like a champ. The same thing goes. Didn't it happen to Henzo and Pride, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he had the same break.
But he had the gi on, so you didn't see the whole thing.
The nasty arm dangling. Yeah. And the same thing goes. I was actually just thinking about that Tim Sylvia fight. I believe Herb Dean was the ref, right? Herb Dean, he yelled, stop. And I remember Tim Sylvia thinking that there's nothing wrong, And then when you go back and you watch you see the replay and you see it snap. So that was probably obviously the ref's there to protect you if something goes awry, and that was the right call at the time. Whether Tim Sylvia liked it or not, his arm would have been donezo if he just kept going.
Here's the thing, I know, Tim is, one of these guys that you don't ever want to admit that, you got a broken bone or whatever. But if he actually threw a punch with that arm after the fact, it'd have been a bad night for him.
Or let's say if Frank just hung onto it, you know what I mean? Hung onto it and wrenched on it more, what kind of damage would that have been? Maybe that tore, ligaments or tendons that are potentially not able to be repaired. So that was the better call at the time, for sure.
Vintage UFC right there.
Yeah, so that's where that's the stuff that I remember. Like I said, I don't really watch any more fights nowadays, so it's really hard for me to tell you. I probably couldn't even tell you who champs are right now.
I'm the same way, and I think it's more just because I don't know if it was like the tough age where they were pumping out personalities like it was nothing. Like there was almost 5-6 guys a show that you were invested in for whatever reason. I think the UFC relies more on like the social media side of things that kind of help athletes grow to an extent where they don't kind of do that. Like they used to do those countdown things where you would have a 30-40 minute video of just this whole fighter's life that would get fans invested in. I don't see that as much anymore as what we used to see, and I think that's why you see this complete parody and you don't see as many big name fighters, stars come out of the UFC just because no one's real. It's just another guy, another girl going out there for whatever reason.
Almost could be too much to grasp. There's too much of it's flooding the market. You think back to early 2000s. You remember there was an event every 2 months, and basically every other event you could have. Robbie Lawler might fight at let's say UFC, just a number. Let's say UFC 48. Then he would fight on 50 and just keep rolling like that to where they would have him. It built staples of people, that's for sure. And then those guys that have gone that long, which is pretty amazing that Robbie Lawler went as long as he did, starting from 19, until whenever the last fight he had. But there might be a lot, and I think that's something with BKFC is I feel like obviously it's easy for them to take guys that already have stars built. You know what I mean? The guys from other promotions, and they're well known, so you could build a promotion off of that. But then you're going to have people that I feel like myself and other gentlemen that are, basically homegrown talent that maybe the world didn't know who we were before the BKFC, and then now that that's where our roots are as far as the world knows.
But I think the funny part is go and look at the stars that have signed with BK. None of them are champions.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting to think about that.
I mean, it's like, look, it's great to have them, under contract and attached to what bare knuckle is. But I think it speaks more to what you were just sitting there saying. The guys or girls that maybe didn't have all the eyes on them are now getting this platform, getting these chances, and Jessica Borga was basically nobody, 6 months ago, a year ago. She's BKFC's featherweight champion. All from looks of it, she's probably going to be fighting Christine Fieri, arguably, the queen of bare knuckle right now.
Yeah.
And so it's like you see guys like Kai Stewart. Like, no one knew who Kai Stewart was 2 years ago.
And now he's on a run, man. He's on a run.
Dave Mundell. There's another guy. He was like, just this middle of the road, MMA guy. He gets here. He's been on the roll the last 2 years. So it's like, that's what I like about bare knuckle. The superstars aren't actually the ones that are the belt holders right now. They're there, they're competing, but they're not the ones that are making these runs and going on for title fights and things like that. I mean, yeah, you got what was it, Mike Perry, but he's got a made up belt.
Well, the thing is it's a different skill set. So you do have people that maybe weren't maybe. Perhaps they were middle of the road in MMA, but then they got into this, and then that's really their bread and butter. And, I think that's a different thing. It goes the same way where you might see a boxer. Like, you remember when Paulie Malignaggi came in there, and everybody figured he was just going to tear through who's the gentleman that he fought that used to hang with McGregor? What's the guy's name off the top of my head?
Artem
Levin. No, not Artem Levin. Artem what? What's
I thought it was like Lobov or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But, here everybody figured, Paulie's just going to tear him up because Paulie's a boxer. But this is a different game. It's not boxing. You know what I mean? It is not boxing. It is bare knuckle fighting, and that is
Paulie, because I just heard he signed with the other promotion.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. He said he's going to sign that, and he mentioned that he wants to go through the ranks rather than just using his power to take a title shot, which that's admirable. That's admirable.
That's why everyone loves Paulie. Like, win, lose, draw, like him, hate him, whatever. He's a fighter's fighter. Like, he's not just going to sit there and be like, you know what, I want a title fight. He could have very well went right in there and demanded a title fight, and he probably would have gotten it. But I love guys that say, you know what, I'll take on 2 or 3 contenders over the next year, and let's see where the chips fall. You got to love him.
Yeah, no, Paulie's the man. Paulie's dope. It's good to watch him still competing and doing something that still works. Again, like I said, the most damage that you're going to take is going to be in the fight, obviously with cuts and things like that. But because in training, like I said, I feel like I hardly come out of training battered at all. We're in kickboxing. I felt like you always got something nagging you. And obviously, I trained MMA back in the day, and there was always just something, ligament hurt here, this and that. Jiu-jitsu was rough,
It must be a lot easier. You don't have to do the wrestling classes anymore. You don't have to do the classes anymore. You can just worry about throwing your hammers, man.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I don't think, like I said, if this wasn't around, I don't think I'm not even certain I'd still be competing in kickboxing either, but I definitely wouldn't be doing MMA. My time is very limited as well. I work full time. I've got a family. I've got a ranch. So sometimes it even burns me out, the fact that I'm burning the wick at both ends, and every once in a while I'll light it in the middle as well. So that's obviously during fight camp time too. You know what I mean? I'm burning around the clock, and that's probably the roughest part right there.
Now, I mean, that's always not the easiest choice to make. So, I mean, I'll take this next last one, and then wrap this one up. What you already said it. Limited time. You're not a spring chicken anymore. Things of that nature. What are some of your goals over the next year? Year and a half, or when do you see you quote unquote hanging the gloves up?
It's funny. I was just talking with my father about that this morning. I told him maybe 4 or 5 more years, and he says, "You want to make a wager on that?" But you know what? I feel damn good, to be honest with you. I feel damn good. My body's in good shape. I don't have any nagging injuries or anything like that. I'll be 40 in a couple days here, actually. So, but I feel damn good. So, honestly, I have 3 more fights to fulfill on this contract, and we'll see what comes after that. And I like fighting kind of back to back. It was nice for those first 2 with BKFC that they were like less than 60 days apart. That was nice. I healed up pretty quick. So
I'll
just
say it
taking it
like
fight by
this.
fight.
When next time your dad doubts you, just show him Houston Alexander's last 3 fights.
Well, who I mentioned was Louis Palomino. Louis is a stud, man. Right? You're here. I believe he's 44, and that guy is he's good. That's admirable what he does. The fact that he's still moving. He's 44 years old and still hanging and banging. So that's good.
Yeah, those are some of the guys. I mean, he's almost 50 now, right?
Yeah, he's a specimen though, right? I mean, obviously both those guys are, but you take care of your body. I take care of my body. I take care of, I don't live a wild life. Obviously, I live a very humble and relaxed. I don't want to say relaxing life because it's full blast all the time, but I'm not out partying. I'm not out, chasing women. I'm not out doing anything like that. Literally, if I'm not doing this, I'm hanging with my kids, hanging with my wife. Pretty relaxed. I almost live like a damn monk. I don't drink, don't smoke, don't do none of that. So that's a benefit that keeps me moving, that I feel like is some of these other guys, these younger guys, they still have that pursuit in them. I don't have that kind of pursuit any longer. That's done.
Well, as we wrap this one up, what I typically do is kind of throw the proverbial microphone over to you, Ryan. Anyone you would like to thank, training partners, teammates, any socials that you do have that you want to promote, any sponsors you have, anything you want to say to the listeners and your fan. The time is yours, my friend.
Well, all right, cool. Hey, thank you. So, first off, thank you to my family for putting up with me all the time. Thank you for my wife, my kids that deal with my mood swings, my attitude, and everything that comes along with a fight camp. Thank you to my sponsors, Zay Tattoos, Humboldt Exotics, Huckleberry Hill Farms, Lotus Mountain, Active Care Chiropractic. Who else do I got? Bell Tower, and let me think here. Just Humboldt County in general. I want to thank Humboldt County for always having my back. My county where I live has done nothing but show love to me, so that's been fantastic. July 25th, ECW Arena, 2300 Arena, Philadelphia. Let's go have a blast, man. Full blast, and let's do it.
I'm looking forward to it one way or another, my friend. It's always fun having bare knuckle here in my backyard. I was covering Dave's XFE promotion way before he wound up launching bare knuckle. I remember when CFFC bought him, and him and his son were walking around just doing nothing. They were stuck under contract, and I remember him sitting there saying, like, "Listen, I'm gonna start a bare knuckle promotion. As soon as our contracts are up, and it's gonna be the biggest thing in the world." And he's almost completed that statement to me. So.
Hey, that's great, man.
I wish Dave and Damon, all the best in their respective fight promotions. Wish you the best of skill here coming on the 25th. We're 2-3 weeks away now. It's should be a blast, as it always is in South Philly. So
absolutely.
Appreciate your time, and we definitely got to do this again sometime, my friend.
Sounds good. Thank you, Steven. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, brother.
Not a problem. You have a good one, my friend.
You as well. Take care.
You too. All right, everyone. That was Ryan Peterson, another great combat sports veteran. Going to be having some fun in the BKFC cage here in July 25th. As he said, 2300 the arena. For people who don't know, that's the ECW arena in South Philly. But another fun one in the books. I will be back tomorrow evening, and we're going to be talking on a 108 Stitches podcast with former Philadelphia Phillies pitcher Pat Combs. Rescheduled interview. We're going to have some fun with that one, guys. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share the South Florida Tribune pages, both whether it's Facebook, YouTube, X, wherever your poison is. Share it with your mom, share it with your girlfriend. Make sure you're showing us love on all the platforms. I will be back running the ship this week. Scott should be back sometime soon with Candy. hold on a few more weeks here with me as we continue to grow and have fun here on the South Florida Tribune Media Network. Other than that, I'm Steve. This was another episode of The Real and the Rare, and appreciate Mr. Ryan Peterson for joining us. Best of skill on his upcoming fight. Catch you guys later. Peace out.